And just allow yourself to turn inward. Allow the awareness and the focus to just pull inward. Allow the awareness to anchor itself with the breath as a way of drawing it from jumping around outside to coming within. Just allow that awareness to anchor in the breath. There's always noise. Whether the noise is coming from someone outside you or coming from the sound of your own thoughts in your mind. Meditation is not about figuring out how to stop the noise, but it's about finding that state of noiselessness within yourself. Dive deep and find that place of noiselessness within. Draw that awareness to the fullness of your heart, not the physical heart, not the heart with chambers, but the undivided heart. The energy center of the heart's energy. Draw the awareness there. And just allow yourself to rest in that fullness of the heart. As you inhale, feel that breath, that sacred prana, flowing into your heart and causing it to expand and expand with each inhalation. And as you exhale, allow the fullness of your heart to pour forth from you. So you're bringing the prana in, the heart is expanding. And on the exhalation, you are exhaling and sending out that love, that fullness out into the universe. Breathing in, and the heart gets fuller and fuller, wider and wider as that heart chakra opens and opens. You can think of it as a beautiful lotus flower, and the petals of your heart just opening one by one. And then as you exhale, just sending so naturally, so effortless as an exhalation. You just exhale, and that love, that fullness flows out into the world. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of your hands together at your heart center in Namaste. And gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Slowly lower the hands and open the eyes. Welcome. Here we are on this time of the spring equinox, the solstice. Just yet another shift, yet another opportunity to open ourselves to the shifts in nature that invite us to shift within ourselves. Every time, whether it's a full moon or a new moon or solstice, they're just times of opportunity to say, hey, this is happening in the sun, in the moon. What's happening in me? How can I harness this powerful time to also shift within. So here we are at the time of the spring equinox. Yet another opportunity to shift. Beginning, as always, with a question that has come in from our Sabtika? Tiga ekdam? Okay. Beginning, as always, with a question that's come in advance from our family joining us from online, from the internet. Then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. You shared that we shouldn't be afraid of death, as there is no missing link in our consciousness. But when we reincarnate, we forget who we are. So we lose the consciousness. And that's what scares me. This has been asked by Ananda Grace Ray via Instagram. So this refers to something we were speaking about a few nights ago, where someone had asked how to know soul. Maybe it was just last night, actually. How do we know soul? And I was saying one of the ways to do it is to think back on different times in your life. Going back to the earliest days when you first were saying I. Now we've been saying I since we were 2 years old, 3 years old. But what that I meant has changed so many times. What we mean by I at 2, what we mean by I at 20, what we mean at 40, what we mean at 60. Our understanding is different, but also that very aspect is different. So when the 2-year-old says, I want cookies, that experience of I, a young child dependent on someone to please hand me a cookie, someone who doesn't worry about the impact upon my body of the cookie. Someone who's not thinking about where the cookies come from. Are they, organic, eco-friendly, fair trade, just cookie. And then in our 20s, when we're thinking about university and jobs and maybe marriage and our life and our identity and who we are, and completely different experience of I. We tend to judge ourselves at that time based on grades and scores and jobs and careers and money and attainment. Fast forward a few decades, we tend to identify ourselves based on family and relationships and what we've achieved. I'm so-and-so's mother or so-and-so's wife or the founder of this, or whatever it may be. And I was saying how even though what we identify as I has changed, we keep saying I, and there's been no break in that I. And I was offering that as an opportunity to experience that which is continuous. That even though the body changes, the roles change, the experiences change. The one who is having the experience does not change. And that was one way of beginning to touch the I. Like in the same way that these eyes are perceiving this paper, this hand, this glass of water, that camera, these beautiful beings. Well, what I'm perceiving keeps changing based on what I put into my visual field. The objects of my perception keep changing. But the act of perception, the perceiving itself, doesn't change. Whether I'm perceiving a piece of paper, or a cool breeze, or a bit of unseasonal rainfall like we had suddenly last night, or a glass of water, what it looks like, what it tastes like. That which I'm perceiving, the object of perception is changing. But the subject, the one who is perceiving, doesn't change. And that's one way to go in and to start to kind of begin to understand what is soul? Like, who is that in me who's not changing? So now we're asked, well, so that was just the foundation of the question. So now we're asked, you say we shouldn't be afraid of death because there's no missing link in this consciousness, and death is just yet another phase. But in our incarnations, we forget who we are, and so we lose that consciousness. So we don't lose consciousness. We lose memory. It's very different. Memory is a product of my brain. It is an aspect of, specifically, a part of my brain called the hippocampus. Other parts as well, but we know that the hippocampus plays an important role in the formation of memories. If you get a lesion in the hippocampus, a stroke in the hippocampus, you're going to lose memory, and you may even lose the ability to form new memory. But again, it's not isolated in one part of the brain, but it's in the brain. My mom, as some of you may know, my mom had a horrible, horrible stroke just exactly 3 years ago and lost her memory. She didn't lose bodily function. She wasn't paralyzed. It wasn't one of those types of strokes. But she had such massive brain damage that she lost memory. If you say to her, "Who are you?" she couldn't answer that question. If you say, "Who am I?" she couldn't answer that question. If you say, "Where are we?" she couldn't answer that question. So she's lost long-term memory, and she's also lost the ability to form new short-term memories. So you say, "Hey, Mom, did you have lunch?" She says, "No." Now, she may have just had lunch 5 minutes ago. But in her awareness, there was no lunch because there is no memory of lunch. So there's no ability to form short-term memory. But there's still consciousness. Even when she has no idea who I am, and I don't even mean consciousness on the deepest, highest, most disembodied level. I mean consciousness even in the body, in this particular incarnation. She couldn't tell you my name. She couldn't tell you who I was. But when I say, "Love you, Mama," she says, "I love you, baby," and she kisses me. Lots and lots and lots of kisses. She knows. She can't articulate it. There's no memory. But there is consciousness that is not dependent on memory. And again, that's only in this particular body with her particular brain and what's left of it. Now you go into a different body, a different brain. No memory at all. No individual consciousness of even a particular incarnation. So we've taken the memory loss to a whole new level. Now it's not even just little bits and pieces that she has. Now there is nothing. We have no recollection of a past life. Not even the same brain. But consciousness is not a product of the body. This takes us into I pause for just a moment because I keep asking, do we go there? Because consciousness is one of those subjects that could take the next month of your life for us to even begin to dive into. But for the purpose of where we are, consciousness is that which you can think of it as a light. It is a light that is shining upon different experiences. So as we said, I perceive the paper because my eyes are working. I perceive a drink of cool water because my taste buds, my sensory perception is working. I can feel it on my lips, on my tongue, in my throat. Now go deeper. Not just physical sensations. We're no longer talking about eyes or taste buds or temperature sensors. Now we're talking about a light of just being conscious. Now, what it is conscious of keeps changing. What I am conscious of on my deathbed in my 80s or 90s or 100s, and then what I am conscious of as a newborn baby who has just popped out of a womb, totally different. Different experiences, different objects of consciousness. But the light that consciousness shines is the same. Consciousness stays. It's that which doesn't depend upon the objects I am aware of or conscious of. It is that light. So yeah, you'll have a whole new brain. You won't have memory on a neurological level. But what you'll have on the level of soul, on the level of the Jiva-Atma soul, is what we speak of as samskaras, which are impressions, that actually stay with us. The subtle body travels with the soul, and the subtle body is man, buddhi, ahankar. The mind, the intellect, the ego. Not what you've learned, not what you've been conscious of, but your practice of consciousness, your depth of consciousness, your experience of consciousness. All of that sadhana that you do. The gyan that you achieve, the wisdom that you achieve, that stays with you. Not the objects. So you've got to come back and learn math and science and history. You're not going to be born remembering the facts. But you're going to be born with the impressions of that work which you have done. But this is why, as our beautiful family member has asked, that this scares him. Scares her because of going into a new body without memory. Well, this is one of the reasons to really get in touch with soul. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going with you. If you've got to take a journey You want to know who you're traveling with. Right? I remember when I first went off to college and they had assigned roommates. One of the things that Stanford did at that time was they would assign you roommates. You didn't get to pick your roommates. And they would try to assign with as much diversity as possible. So my freshman year, I had a roommate from China and a roommate from France. And we were about as different as 3 people could be. And they did it on purpose. And I remember in orientation week, before classes started, all the time they gave us to get to know your roommate. Like, you're going to spend the next year with these people. They're very different from you. Get to know them. Make friends. Well, as you leave this body, and as you take the next one, and then as you leave that one, and as you take the one after that, and as you go on this journey, your roommate, your seatmate, your travel partner is soul. And so the less you know that being, the more scary it's going to be, because then you feel like you're all alone and, oh my God, I'm going to lose my memory, I'm going to lose everything. It's terrifying, all alone in the void. But if you know that you're dropping into the arms of a loved one or the arms of your best friend, then it feels much safer and more secure. You still don't necessarily know where you're going, but you at least know who you're going to be with. And even the most unpleasant journeys, if taken with someone you love, they're fun, right? We can all think back on those disaster vacations, but that actually ended up being beautiful because you loved the person you were with. And you can look back and laugh and say, oh my God, do you remember when the car broke down in the middle of the desert? And oh my God. But we laugh because we love. Because there we were, stuck in the middle of the desert, but with the loved one. And so in the same way, if that scares you, make sure to spend some time while you're here getting to know who your travel companion is going to be. Because death is certain. Loss of the brain is certain. Therefore, loss of memory is certain. Get to know that which you are not going to lose. That which is going with you. It'll make this part of the journey much more enjoyable. And it'll make the onward journey much more enjoyable. Great. Other questions? Yes, come. There's a mic here. Come forward. There's a microphone right here. It's not on.
Namaste, Sadhviji.
Namaste.
So you talked about the impressions. Do the soul carry the impressions to the next incarnation? And if yes, how to remove those impressions of this birth?
Beautiful. The soul doesn't carry them. The subtle body carries them. And it's a philosophical distinction. It's not one that actually, for all practical purposes, makes any kind of difference. But it's, from a philosophical standpoint, important to know. They're not impressions upon the soul itself. It's impressions upon the subtle body, the sukshma sharir. ultimate moksha, liberation, is actually when the sukshma sharir, that subtle body, dissipates. When those impressions are cleared, when the karmic bank account is emptied, and when we get free. So yes, the samskaras absolutely travel with us. And that's a lot of what determines, when you speak about karma and destiny. Well, karma is action. But the cycle of karma and destiny and rebirth and reincarnation, it's not as simple as just action-reaction. It's also these impressions. It's why we emphasize, for example, in our Hindu tradition, we speak about the 16 samskaras, the 16 samskaras, these sacred rites of passage in life, the rituals around them. Not just because they make this particular life deeper and more powerful and more meaningful and more spiritual, but actually because they are leaving impressions. When you think about brain versus mind and intellect. So man, buddhi travel with us. The mind, the intellect travels with us. The brain does not. So it's not what we know, but it's how we think. It's our way of thinking. How do I identify? If I identify as body, for example, in this life I will say I am female, American, 53 years old, sannyasi, 5'3", right? Next life, I could say male, Indian, or African, or whatever it may be, 6'4". The details of the identification are different because the body is different, but the way of thinking stays. That's samskara. That's actually the power of what our spiritual practice gives us, is a whole new way of understanding. And that stays with us. So if in this life I manage to break through the idea that I am this body, and I can break through into the awareness of who I really am, that I'm not the story and I'm not the narrative and I'm not my childhood and I'm not what's been done to me or what I've done, and I'm not all of that. That impression, that work, that stays with you. The details of the knowledge you've acquired don't. But the deep samskara, the impression, the pattern, that stays. And in the same way, if I think I am the body, and so I spend my life in competition and grabbing and desires and aversions and this and that, well, you'll do it again in next birth. You'll desire something different. You'll have an aversion to something different. But the nature, the pattern will be the same. Great. Other questions? Wonderful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. And we'll, okay, Chika, we'll take yours. Yes. Okay, no problem. It's okay. Can you come to the microphone?
Thank you. It's not really a philosophical question. There's someone I'd like to meet through you both and meet you both as well. Just something like that. It's not a philosophical question.
No problem, whatever it is.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's what I should probably talk to you both.
I can't hear you very well. It's like
Sorry.
I'm getting kind of one out of every 3 words you're saying.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Can you hear me clearly now? Yes. So I'd like to speak to you or Swamiji, maybe.
Sure, we can talk
one-on-one.
after this.
Yes.
No problem.
Thank you so
Wonderful.
much.
Yes, of course. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful day and morning to our family joining us from all over the world through this gift of technology. And I look so forward to being together again tomorrow. And so